I have to tell you, in Andover, we have I'm at the senior center, so we have a supportive day. We have a wide variety of programs and services in place. And my experience is that people are very resistant to asking for help, especially people who are older, because they're afraid that if they ask for help, it's the start of a loss of their independence, and they're going to fight that with every ounce of strength that they have. So when we applied for the grant, this is our opening day. This was the kickoff event for the Memory Café. We had a jazz ensemble, which was really neat, and all the musicians were seniors, which was cool too. But we applied on a threefold basis. We asked to do the Memory Café, which we thought would be a great intro as a way to, the same things you've heard from everybody else today, provide respite to caregivers, but also to get the two together in a social situation. So rather than focusing on disease or memory loss or anything else, you're focusing on just having a good time. It just completely switches your focus. The second thing we were hoping to do was to be able to provide kind of a regular respite for the caregiver, and that would be utilizing our social day program. The idea being that they could have the person they were caring for come every Wednesday afternoon so that they could sign up for a yoga class, and so then they would be committing to doing something for themselves on a regular basis. That part of the grant was not approved, so that was kind of out of the mix. And then the third was to provide respite for respite vouchers for people, just to give them a chance or an incentive to really take some time for themselves, whether it was an emergency situation where somebody had to go to the hospital, or whether it was to go visit the grandchildren in California who they hadn't seen in 3 years. Thought that was so cool, being able to completely change the focus of somebody's everyday life dealing with sometimes difficult situations. A welcoming place for people living with memory changes, a social environment, interaction with others who are in a similar situation. This was only a monthly event, but it was at any rate a monthly break from the daily routine, and creating some sort of a sense of normalcy. And this is just one of the things that we did. Each Memory Café had a little bit different focus. You saw the jazz ensemble, we had art therapy, several different kinds. We had exercise. One of our staff had previously worked at an assisted living, and they had trained her in chair exercises, and she did chair exercises with people, which they really loved. We had a yoga teacher come in and do chair yoga and also breathing and relaxation, and it was very interesting. I really paid attention in that one because I knew some of the people who were attending were, it was hard to keep them focused. And one spouse said, well, I'm going to stay as long as he's involved. And so I watched her husband, and he stayed the whole hour, did every single pose. I didn't see a single one that he didn't do. It was really, really neat. And I don't know if she was surprised. She never said she was surprised, but she's one of those people you just can't read her. But it was just nice to see. So there was a lot of variety. We did a couple of different art things, a couple of different music things, and as I said, a couple of different types of exercise too, so people got a mix. As other people have said, they started their program in the summer and it was somewhat difficult. And I'd say that it's also difficult starting a program because one of the biggest ways that you reach people is word of mouth. You can have the stories in the newspaper, the newsletter, reach out to other people in the network, but word of mouth is the biggest way to raise awareness. And this is all something that people are coming to us and saying, I'd like to do. Although, we certainly had a lot of people that we approached that we thought could benefit. And I have to say the hardest part about working with older caregivers is, one, fighting their fight to remain independent and not feeling that they should be asking for respite, because of course I'm going to take care of my husband, my wife. That's what I'm supposed to do. So they didn't see themselves as needing respite. So a little bit, I think, of a relook at how we put that out there. And actually, at the very end, I referenced the national website that speaks about light respite. And I like that, and I was sorry that I hadn't seen that until pretty much the end of the grant period, because there's obviously resources out there that I wasn't aware of, and information, and it's, a learning experience. So you can go ahead. Again, we had drumming, and also tambourines. And with the tambourines, the instructor, we have a group that does tambourines at the center, and the instructor has them do specific movements. So the instructor is sitting across, which is why everybody's in a line and they're following her. And it's absolutely amazing how well they followed the instruction, and really, really loved the something about the rhythm, I think, in the two different things. Okay. This was speaking to the part of the grant that was removed, but I want to talk about this because there are aspects of it that I think were important. When we offered the vouchers, we found that people were very resistant to having somebody come into their house. They were more comfortable making a commitment to doing something outside of the house. But I think that's an important piece of respite, to try to get people to commit. So we did have some interplay between the two programs, although it was outside of the grant. But again, it's getting the caregiver to commit to doing something for themselves. Well, if I know that they're going to be busy, then I can do my yoga or do my nothing, or go back home and go to bed. Okay. And this is just pictures of the Senior Connections program, which is our supportive day program. And I put them in just because it shows you that there's a lot of group interaction, and some of it is somewhat similar to some of the things that happened in the Memory Café, except it's just with the one person and doesn't include the spouse. What we found is that some of the people who were in the Memory Café, in Senior Connections, their spouses came to the Memory Café. And it was really nice to see the difference, because we didn't usually see that interaction between the couples. And not just between the couples, but between several couples, again, having validation for what they're going through from their peers, who they wouldn't necessarily see. Because what we would find with the Senior Connections program is it was a quick drop-off. Because a lot of people knew that if they hung around, they were going to, no, I don't want to stay today. Let me go with you. Let me go with you. So that was kind of a quick drop-off. Okay. And then the respite voucher was the third piece, and we thought if we had 10 vouchers for $125, that it would just give people a chance to say, this is really good. I can take a break for myself, and I have to look into doing this more often because it's good for me and it worked. The interesting thing is that we did not find 10 people that were willing to do it. Unfortunately, what we did find is a lot of people waited so long before they admitted that they really needed some help. Several people passed away. Some couples moved into assisted livings. So there were extreme lifestyle changes of a lot of the people that we thought would be appropriate. But what did happen is that because of the change in the grant, we had more money for the respite. And those are our stories. One of the people that we reached, she had been a caregiver for her husband for many years with dementia. Well, then he had some medical issues. He had had a heart attack. He was very compromised. He really needed somebody with him all the time. And when I say all the time, he was sleeping in the dining room. They had a hospital bed set up in the dining room, and she slept on a blow-up bed in the same room. She literally could not leave him alone. So here was somebody who had been stealing little bits of time when the issue she was dealing with was just dementia, and going out for an hour and a half with her friends and hiking. So that was her stress reliever, and that was also something she really, really enjoyed. And another thing she did, I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it had to do with skiing up in North Conway. But Whether she wrote articles about it or she was a secretary for a group, that part I never quite got. But she would be up at 2 o'clock in the morning and still doing that work on the computer. But what she did with the respite was use little blocks of time, an hour here, 2 hours there, because now she couldn't leave her husband home at all, alone. And he did pass away, but he was in the hospital for a week, so really he was home. So, you know, she was able to do that, which is what they really, really wanted. Sorry, I have to jog my memory on what the other story is. And the other story, I know I have it here. Was a woman who was caregiving for her husband who was legally blind. And this was a second marriage. They didn't have any kids together. The kids that they relied on were his, and they lived in Pennsylvania, so not close by. She was on oxygen 24/7, and our nurse would go out and visit with them once a week, just, you know, to see how things were doing and, you know, offer suggestions. And she went one day, and even with the oxygen, a lot of difficulty breathing. Said, you know what, we need to call 911, you need to get checked out. She said, well, I can't because I can't leave Tom. So the ambulance took them both to the hospital. She was admitted, and he went to a local nursing home for 3 days until the daughter was able to come up. So she was in the hospital maybe a week. The daughter stayed up, and then they both came back home. 2 weeks later, same thing happened. So again, he went to the nursing home, and, you know, with the extra funds we had, we were able to help them with some of that cost until the daughter could come up. So those were, you know, two huge, huge stories. And here, my outreach at the bottom, word of mouth again and again and again, because I think despite all the info you put out there, I ask people, how did you find out? My friend told me. It's the biggest sell. So. This is one of the cardstock that we had printed to promote the Memory Café. Collaborations with, you know, local agencies, faith-based groups, other people in the elder networks, agencies providing in-home care. I think I might have spoken to most of these, some of the challenges, misunderstanding the concept of respite, and how after almost a year people are finally saying, oh, what is that group that you have? And the other is just on us. At the time that we received the grant, the person who was supposed to be overseeing it left. And it became an issue where there were several different people working on the project, and that made it very challenging. It worked out okay, but that was a huge internal challenge, and unexpected outcomes. Again, I spoke to these in the early in the talk. One was interesting. A lot of people, when we offered respite, said, what's the catch? I don't have to, I just have to do this paperwork? Well, all right. And I mean, some people we really had to get back to and say, you know, if you will work with us and fill out this paperwork, we can offer you some assistance. And they would, but they were really suspicious. There was more to it than that. And it was nice to be able to say, no, there isn't.